But later never came. Irrevocable thought. Patience is a mercy. Intolerance. Power. Providence. Her power is an illusion made real. Her dread. Guiding path. Succumb into the darkness.
Hey guys, just wanted to make a guide on this build that I've been enjoying recently, which is Voltaxic Burst Occultist. Now let's take a look at Voltaxic Burst itself. Voltaxic Burst is a spell where after you cast it, there is a short delay and then it will create an explosion around you. And enemies who die from the cast or die shortly after will themselves create an explosion. Now there's two interesting parts about Voltaxic Burst. First of all is that due to the delay, you can effectively queue up a certain number of casts while waiting for the first one to go off. And you get a more damage multiplier based on the number of casts that you have queued up. Second of all, it has split damage types. So the spell itself has base lightning damage, but it has 40% of that converted to chaos damage. Now in the past, Voltaxic Burst had several downsides. First of all, that split damage scaling makes it harder to utilize things such as penetration, negative resistances, and in the case of chaos, wither. To overcome this, you'd have to use something like Original Sin, which is crazy expensive, or a Voltaxic Rift Bow, which is a bit limiting and not the greatest weapon. Secondly, due to the delay of the skill, it felt very clunky to play. You would cast it, you have to wait a few seconds for it to go off. It really just didn't feel good. And lastly, when you use the skill, it can be quite straining on your eyes. It's a very bright light, but I personally enjoy it. I'm sure some people will do too. So in 3.27, Voltaxic Burst got a buff, improving its cast speed, area of effect, and the mana costs. In addition to that, we received some solutions to this issue of split damage. First of all is the new Lycia Bloodline. This allows us to convert 50% of our elemental damage into chaos damage. Combined with the base conversion in Voltaxic Burst, we can achieve 90% conversion from that. The second solution we got was the Foulborn Blue Nightmare Jewel. The Foulborn line says that passives granting lightning resistance or all elemental resistances in radius also grant lightning damage converted to chaos damage. This means that in combination with tattoos on our tree, we can actually achieve 54% of lightning damage converted to chaos damage. Now that means that we can get 94% of our lightning damage converted to chaos damage for Voltaxic Burst. This allows us to fully invest into chaos damage scaling and wither and negative chaos res. So I've chosen to go with the Blue Nightmare Jewel for converting our lightning damage over the Lycia Bloodline, just because I think it's a bit more flexible. We can achieve a slightly higher amount of conversion, and the 10% of lightning damage as extra chaos is a nice little boost to our damage. So how do we scale Voltaxic Burst's damage? First of all, cast speed. Cast speed actually has an exponential scaling with Voltaxic Burst. This is because cast speed not only increases our number of hits per second, but it also increases the number of queued casts we have per second. And if you remember, the more queued casts we have for Voltaxic Burst, the more damage we will do. So in this build, we are pumping up our cast speed with reflected jewelry such as these rings, 48% increased cast speed. On this amulet we have 45% increased cast speed. In our links we are using Awakened Spell Echo, which gives 59% more cast speed, and a Mageblood Onslaught Flask, which ends up giving about 39% increased cast speed. Apart from that, we have this Cluster Jewel here with 3% increased attack and cast speed with lightning skills, and we're buffing that effect with the small passive skills have 35% increased effect, gives us 4% cast speed with the lightning skills for each one of these nodes we take, and we're taking 10, so that's 40%. And finally, the other main boost we have to cast speed is the Feral Bloodline with Hunt Leader. Each of these Spectral Tigers give us 7% cast speed, so there's a limit of 5, so when you stack those all up, you get 35% cast speed. The second way to scale Voltaxic Burst's damage is increasing duration. As the longer the duration you have, the more queued up casts you can get, and so the more value you get out of that more damage multiplier on the skill. However, this actually ends up increasing the clunkiness of the skill, so I decided to go away from scaling this vector and instead reduce it. So using this less duration support, I lower Voltaxic Burst duration to about 1 second. This obviously results in lower damage, but with the immense cast speed investment we have, it ends up feeling fine in my opinion. However, on Uber bosses, if we want more damage, we can swap out the less duration support for an increased critical damage support. This allows us to build up much more casts, which results in more damage. I think in the end it ends up boosting our damage by like 70-80% or so, which is quite big, and we're not too worried about the increased clunkiness in Uber boss fights because we're pretty much just standing still the whole time. Now the third way to scale it is by increasing the base damage of the spell. So normally the way we'd go about this is increasing the level of the skill gem. However, I've decided to use Energy Blade instead. This grants us a buff where our max ES goes down, but we get a main hand weapon with flat lightning damage based on our maximum energy shield. In combination with the Spell Blade support, which adds a percentage of our main hand weapon damage to our base spell damage, we can get a lot of base spell damage scaling there. Now the advantage of this is that we can scale both defense and offense in the same stat by increasing our energy shield. Now how can we get a lot of energy shield for this build? We can get very high energy shield pieces such as the body armor, helmet, gloves and boots, and they are not as hard to come by in this league due to the abundance of high tier items from the Genesis tree. In addition to that, we have the new Foulborn Blue Dream jewel. Now this grants lightning resistance converted to maximum energy shield. Just like with the Blue Nightmare, we can tattoo a bunch of our intelligence nodes into lightning resistance. And with Faith and Steel here, this in total ends up giving us 38% increased maximum energy shield. Secondly, on Occultist, we've taken Vile Bastion. This grants maximum energy shield is increased by chance to block spell damage, and our chance to block spell damage is 78%. So we're getting a large multiplier from that one as well. We're also using this large cluster jewel that I showed before with plus 12 maximum energy shield and increased effect. So that's giving us a bunch of additional flat energy shield. And we have the Discipline skill gem, which also grants a bunch of flat energy shield. And we are also scaling Intelligence, which grants us percent energy shield. So all in all, we end up with around about 10,000 energy shield-ish, and that gives us quite a bit of base damage to our spell. The other thing to note is we can help mitigate the downside of Energy Blade by increasing the quality. So by using Enhance in a +2 level of socketed support gems shield, we can reduce this downside from 50% down to 35%. Now another way to scale the damage is by utilizing crit. And that's one of the reasons why I've picked Occultist as the Ascendancy. Occultists, we get +1 maximum power charges from Forbidden Power, and you gain a power charge after spending a total of 200 mana. And in this build, Voltaxic Burst costs 55 mana, you're spamming it like 10 times per second. So it's very easy to just spam this and get your power charges up. In addition to the crit bonuses that power charges give us and the increased damage we gain from it from our Ascendancy, we can also take a Militant Faith Jewel and make power charges grant us more spell damage. Now obviously this comes with the downside that we can't use frenzy charges, but it's a bit difficult to generate them on this build anyway, so we're not missing out on too much. Now the other way we're scaling damage is through negative resistances, which we can get using the Despair Curse, and we can also use Wither. Now how do we apply Wither in this build? We are using the Balance of Terror unique jewel, where if you've cast Despair in the past 10 seconds, then your hits will inflict Withered for 2 seconds. So one of the things we do is we self-cast Despair. So we have Despair socketed here. The cast speed is very fast for that, like that, 0.14 seconds. And after you cast that, then 10 seconds later, all of your hits will inflict Withered for 2 seconds. And with Voltaxic Burst in this build, we're hitting about 17 times per second, meaning you're basically going to hit max Wither stacks within 1 second. So getting to max Wither stacks is no issue at all. The other cool thing we have with self-casting Despair is that we are using Vixen's Entrapment. Now what happens with this is that when you cast the curse spell, it will trigger a socketed curse spell inside as well. So we have socketed Assassin's Mark in these gloves, so we don't have to manually cast Assassin's Mark on an enemy. When you cast Despair, it'll automatically cast Assassin's Mark on a target. Vixen's Entrapment also helps us with a few other issues. One of them is Curse on Hit. One of them is Curse on Hit. Our Occultist node, Profane Bloom, requires us to curse enemies for them to explode. So the best way to do that is Curse on Hit. And since Vixens aren't particularly expensive, it's pretty easy to buy one with the Curse on Hit implicit on it already. So we grab Vixen's Entrapment with the Enfeeble on Hit corruption. This gives us a bit more tankiness as well. And it also has the line you can apply an additional curse. So we can use Despair, Assassin's Mark, and Enfeeble without overriding any of the curses. And the other problem Vixens solves for us is Spell Leech. So for each curse on the enemy, we leech 0.2% of spell damage. With Curse on Hit, we are basically able to leech off every enemy if we've hit them once before. And the reason we don't go with Despair Curse on Hit is that the gem level and quality of Despair actually end up giving us quite a bit of additional damage. I think it ends up being about 20%, 15 to 20% more damage. So I prefer to cast the curse myself, as we need to cast it for Wither anyways. So a few other quality of life features of the build. As I mentioned before, we have the less duration support gem, so we don't have to end up waiting around as long. It's only a bit over a second you have to wait for the cast to go off. And due to our extremely high cast speed, we can have a Frostblink setup, which is quite fast for us, just dashing around the map. And with Curse on Hit, in addition to Profane Bloom and Spellblade socketed with our Frostblink, you can end up actually clearing packs just with Frostblink itself. Now in terms of mana, how are we solving our mana? Obviously Voltaxic Burst has very high mana cost per second due to the number of casts we're doing. So what we do is we get decent amount of mana regen. I have a few tattoos for mana regen here, a bunch of mana regen on the tree here, and we are using chance to recover 10% of mana when you use skill. So there's a mana mastery here where you can get 10%, and then there's a Watcher's Eye mod. If you are affected by clarity, you also get 10 to 15% chance to recover 10% of your mana. We increase our mana pool quite a lot, so 2200, 10% of that is about 220, and with these percentages you have about a 24% chance to proc that, so that ends up keeping our mana topped up. And yeah, we're also running clarity for that mana regen, so we have 161 mana regen without Arcane Surge up, and you can see sometimes your mana does run out, but for the most part it stays topped up quite well. So in terms of defenses, we have a decent amount of attack block, 70%, 78% spell block, fairly large hit pool, over 10,000 energy shield. We have energy shield leech from Vixens. We have endurance charges via enduring composure. We have immortal call on a cast when damage taken setup, sigil of power, frost shield, enfeeble on hit. Percent of physical damage taken as chaos damage, as in Eldritch Implicence on the helmet and body armor. Chaos immune from chaos inoculation, and we have energy shield recovered on block on our shield. Now let's just take a look at a few other things. What rune grafts are we using? Just have basically 53% increased lightning damage on this one, and this will occasionally call forth a little lightning mirage guy which creates shock to ground, and with the 39% increased effect of non-damaging ailments here, we end up with about 13% shock effect on the enemy. And this Storming Ashcraft gives us the command skill which creates radiant ground on the floor, causes our hit damage to be lucky. We also have the corrupted implicit increased critical strike chance per power charge, which gives us a small boost to our crit chance. In terms of the bloodline, you might be wondering if this is worth it over Void Beacon on the Occultist Ascendancy. I think they perform pretty much the same, but if you are lacking cast speed on some of your gear, I think Pharaoh Bloodline will end up outperforming it. But in this current state of the build, this node is actually a bit better. But yeah, the cast speed does feel a bit nicer during mapping, so I've kept it. We're also scaling our area of effect using Forbidden Power. The more power charges we have, the more AoE we have. The other ways we're scaling area of effect is with Vast Power here, and then Assert Dominance there. And our unique Flask Oriat's End causes enemies to have a chance to explode, dealing a percentage of their life as elemental damage. I was using this because it felt a bit better for proliferating the explodes, but it's not that big of a deal. You can also use Wine at the Prophet. I've used this as well and it feels quite good as well, but obviously Oriat's End is a bit cheaper. And in terms of the large cluster jewel, I went with a lightning damage based one. It's a bit cheaper than using a chaos one, and I also think it helps chain the explosions better, just because you don't want to be one-shotting the enemies with the explosion, and if you take a chaos one, it'll almost for sure one-shot the enemies. So yeah, that's about it for this build. Hope you learned something, and I will catch you all later.